Hi, Kyuho. Thought this might be a more effective way to kind of communicate about this paper. My read is we probably have um, one more shot at getting it past a new first review, and then some real challenges. So I tried to come at it this time as a more objective reviewer. And so, picking up on the theme that keeps coming back as I look back is we keep being asked to make this more of a theory paper, a theory-based paper. And so, what I would like to suggest is that even from the very beginning of the first sentence, whoops, let me go back here first. I just looked at the definition again. A system of ideas intended to explain something, one based on general principles independent of the thing to be explained. Okay. And so to me, that needs to be right here. And I'm not sure I would even leave the explore word in there. It needs to be more strongly stated that we're seeking a theoretical foundation for why these wine consumption communities are developing. Okay, so as we move down here, I'm not going to try to do a lot of edits, but the very first paragraph needs to be indented, and you begin with, and I think that's where we kind of ended up in explaining things, dominant Confucian philosophy, and talking about how Confucian philosophy has been used really in theory development. That's kind of what you're saying here. And then you have the second paragraph, the next, talking about, and then as you hit the theoretical foundation, it seems to me that this needs to, you need to return here to your fundamental assertion in the first sentence of the paper, is that Confucian philosophy is the theory, that the theory is that Confucian philosophy explains much of the behavior we're observing in these women. So you need to have, to me, it's 2.1, Confucian philosophy and behavior. There's thousands of good references. You've already made a number of them there, and you might want to add a couple though, because I'm sure if you take a broader search, you'll find one. Again here, just need to go back through one more time and make sure all of your paragraphs are indented or none of them are, and double spaced. Okay, and so I don't have a problem here with gendered consumption. I think talking about that's great. I think talking about this is great. Um, but again, if you've discussed Confucianism earlier and you brought it in, now you're talking about materialism, globalism, and acculturation. You could. Now, here is something that sort of you titled the subheading um, theoretical foundations. And this is not really the title here, these words, wine consumption in Asia, seems much more like a, a statement of fact. So I would suggest something more along the lines of, why do Asians consume wine? Or why Asians consume wine. Because that's really what you talk about in this. So I think that heading, and I might not have exactly the right words, but I think that heading needs to be changed so it doesn't just look like the head of one of the practical papers that you'd buy. Okay, and so this again within these areas, and it's so hard to read this. We've been working on it so long and been so immersed in it, and I'm sure it is for twice as bad for you. But as you're walking through these, again, if you add the consumption, you rename this consistent with the theory that you're suggesting helps to explain our facts, I think you'll be a lot better off. Uh, here it was fairly minor, but I think you need to get the numbers earlier. Respondents in this study came on a list. There were 26 Korean women. Uh, Respondents in this sample were 26 Korean women who drink wine regularly. That seems to me to be more up to front. As I'm reading a qualitative paper, I'm always concerned with my sample size, and do they have an adequate number of people to be making these decisions. Okay, so you talk here about the hermeneutic approach. I think they would probably eventually strip that, but we need to have it together. I like your findings, this has always been to me the real strength of the paper is how we weave together the discussions of the women and come to the findings, but there is not a clear relationship between the findings and the theoretical foundation we are proposing. So again, back at the beginning, you had three. If you add confusion, you'll have four theoretical areas. On every one of these, to make this a theory paper, after the comment, when you say wine is an item that allows her to connect with other people, you got to go back and find that in the theoretical foundation. Somebody 1984 showed this in a similar way with someone else. And as you look at these, as you're going through, and part of it may be just sort of the choice in how you decided to present it. And I know there are some qualitative papers that don't really weave theory in and out nearly as much as I'm suggesting, but that's coming straight from our editors. So when you get down here, see this one? That's exactly what you need to do with any of these statements that you're using. You need to see how this statement fits in and then tie it back. Now, there's also inconsistent handling of the dialogue. Usually you put it into quotes and you indent it here. And if you're going to do that, you need to always do it. In other words, this one again needs to be separated out. Beyond values, learning and wine. And now, where does this fit in one of the four categories of our theorization? Okay, this one, the learning and sharing, might very well be the modernization and acculturation. You need to say that. It's not obvious to a reviewer who hasn't spent as much time with this. Okay, again, here, if you're going to offset and then you need to always do that. Okay, and here is where, again, you're separating this out and you're saying the theory here, or the comments we heard here are coming from gender role. As you get to the end of these statements, as you did here, and you did it, some of the time, but it needs to always be clearly, directly related back to those theoretical foundations you're proposing at the start. If it turns out when you've reviewed everything and you've linked it back to uh, to those four theoretical bases, if you're not linking anything to one of those particular areas, then perhaps that area could either be left out, or you could note that we did not find any evidence to support this particular theory or this line of thinking. Okay, so again, need to be, yeah, here's a note from somebody else. I would assume that's one of the reviewers or something, but that's basically what I'm saying. You need to always be consistent in setting aside the words. In fact, you have them in quotations. It might be better just because it jumps out to italicize them. And here is, I think, the reviewer suggestion. You might put in answer to the question, comma, why did you, whatever the question was, I obviously don't know what that is. Here's the answer. So to be consistent in handling questions and answers means you just need to have this little bridge in here, and I like the idea of bolding the questions and then italicizing the answers and following through. Okay, I think that's about it. The only as we're doing the conclusion discussion, then I think you need to, and I don't see table 2. There definitely needs to be a table, maybe even a picture if you can create one. Theories and figures often fit together. And so here I would suggest organizing the conclusion and discussions and the key findings right back into the 4 categories of the theoretical foundation you suggested at the part. Again, we've been asked to make this a theory paper. And so if you're theorizing that these are the 4 things that are likely to be impacting, it's fine that maybe one of them doesn't end up impacting. Here in your conclusion and discussion, you could say that, but you return to your theoretical foundation. Okay, this video is going to be getting pretty big, so I'm going to go ahead and shut it out. Be happy to schedule a phone conversation with you. I hope this has been useful, and let's go ahead and take our kind of our final shot at this journal. Kind of the issue is when you have a paper that's sort of perfect for a journal, which got confirmed, and you don't hit there, finding somewhere else is a real challenge.